If you find yourself discouraged about all the hate and injustice in this world, you're not alone, and it's not a new problem. Millennia ago, Solomon wrote, "I observed all the oppression that takes place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, with no one to comfort them. The oppressors have great power, and their victims are helpless. So I concluded the dead are better off than the living. But most fortunate of all are those who are not yet born, for they have not seen all the evil that's done under the sun." In those days, oppression came in many forms, and they're not too different from what we see today. There was oppression by a king or government, by the affluent who exploited the poor, and sometimes the poor were oppressed by other poor people, like we see in Proverbs 28:3, which says, "A poor person who oppresses the poor is like a pounding rain that destroys the crops." And the Old Testament prophets also railed against those who victimized immigrants and the socially weak who had no one to advocate for them, such as widows. Sometimes land was confiscated, or the poor were sold into slavery, or merchants used dishonest skills and business practices to cheat the public. The interesting thing here is that Solomon is the king. He has absolute control, and presumably this godly man is doing everything he can to stamp out oppression. And yet there's this sense of grim resignation, as if Solomon himself knows that even he can't fix everything. And that is a powerful lesson for us, because so many of us throw up our hands and say, "What's the use? There's so much evil. There's nothing we can do, and nothing is ever going to change." The answer we get on that from Jesus is, do what you can in your own community and in your own circle of influence, especially when it comes to helping the vulnerable. Among other things, you can volunteer. Donate your money to those who work with the poor and exploited. Be a friend to the lonely, the newcomer, and the struggling, and have the courage to stand up and say something when you see things that just aren't right. I love the proverb which says, "I will not let my inability to do everything to solve the problem prevent me from doing anything to solve the problem." The only time Christians get to wash their hands is after we do some work to help the situation. Yes, it may seem like the dead and the unborn are so much better off because they don't see all the hurt and heartache in the world. But then Solomon goes on to say that even so, there is still much to enjoy and celebrate in this life, and we can't lose sight of that if we want to lead a healthy, meaningful life. And then he goes right to the root cause of so much evil and oppression: envy and excess. He says, "I saw that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors, but this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. And yet, better to have one handful with quietness and contentment than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind." This is the case of someone who's all alone, without a child or a sibling, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as possible, but then asks, "Who am I working for? Why am I giving up such pleasure now?" It's all so puzzling and depressing. Today, far too many people trade in a satisfying present for a supposedly easier and better future that never arrives. Think about what Jesus says to the rich man in Luke 12, who wants to build bigger barns for all his crops, only to die before he has a chance to do anything. What Solomon is advocating here is moderation, that middle ground between laziness and overwork. There's nothing wrong with working hard, as long as we don't use it as our identity or as an escape from everyday responsibilities. But envy and that keeping up with the Jones mentality often gets in the way. In fact, studies indicate that if neighbors see work trucks at your house, they're much more prone to get work of their own done. It's a competition thing. One of my favorite passages is Proverbs 30, verses 8 and 9. Lord, give me neither poverty nor riches, it says, for if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I'm too poor, I may steal and thus insult your holy name. May we have the maturity and contentment to recognize when God has given us enough. In the next section, Solomon offers an alternative to the ambition and competition that leaves so many people isolated and alone. Listen to this. Two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. So companionship and collaboration instead of competition and conceit. It's often said there are some people who love things and use people, and others who love people and use things. And that is one of the choices that help determine whether we have a satisfying life. We are designed for relationship, whether it's in our families, among our friends, or in the church. We need each other for love, support, and guidance. And that's why, although the online church is such a blessing, it's just not enough. By the way, I like to use this section of Ecclesiastes in weddings to illustrate the power of relationship. And as I always point out, that power is immensely multiplied when God is the third strand in that triple braided cord. When He's at the center of all our relationships, we are stronger and much less prone to fray or snap. A triple braided cord is not easily broken, so entwine yourself with God and the people who love you. Solomon's next subject is the futility of popularity and political power. He says, "It's better to be a poor but wise youth than an old and foolish king who refuses all advice. Such a youth could rise from poverty and might even become king, even if he's been in prison." Then he adds an echo from the life of his father David, who replaced Saul as king after becoming immensely popular with the people, only to have his son Absalom and his friends lead a rebellion against him later. Solomon says, "Everyone rushes to the side of yet another youth who replaces him. Endless crowds stand around him, but then another generation grows up and rejects him too. So it's all meaningless, fleeting, and puzzling, like chasing the wind." So power and popularity, like money, are fickle and uncertain. And Solomon goes on to say that wisdom is not automatic for the old. Just because you're a senior doesn't mean you're smart. Wisdom, at least according to Solomon, comes from listening to good advice and not thinking you know it all. And he goes on to say that cunning, ambition, and hard work may be enough to get you power, but even the successful are always having to look over their shoulders. Everybody is dispensable and replaceable, and that applies to work as well. So power is no place to put your trust. Trust God's power to put you in your place, your proper place. In chapter 5, Solomon moves on to a discussion about making promises to God, and it seems disconnected from the previous section, but it's not. The sense is that sometimes people try to gain power and money by playing let's make a deal with God. If you bless me, Lord, I'll do this and this and this. Solomon writes, "As you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. It's evil to make mindless offerings to God. So don't make rash promises and don't be hasty in bringing matters before Him. and let your words be few, because too many words make you a fool. When you make a promise to God, don't delay in following through. It's better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. So don't let your mouth make you sin. And don't defend yourself by saying the promise you made was a mistake. That would make God angry, and He might wipe out everything you've accomplished. Talk is cheap, like daydreams and other useless activities. Revere God instead. So, when it comes to prayers and petitions, God is not impressed by many words or empty promises, and He's angered by hypocritical pledges we have no intention of honoring. As Jesus explains in Matthew 5, "You have heard it said, you must not break your vows. You must carry out the vows you make to the Lord. But I say, don't make any vows. Don't say, 'by heaven,' because heaven is God's throne. And don't say, 'by the earth,' because the earth is His footstool. Just say a simple, 'yes, I will,' or 'no, I won't.' Anything beyond that is from the evil one." So we're quite simply to be people of our word, especially when it comes to God. Next, the writer goes back to money because people were evidently making vows to God in exchange for material blessings. Solomon says, "Don't be surprised if you see a poor person oppressed by the powerful, and if justice is miscarried in the land. For every official is under orders from higher up, and matters of justice get lost in red tape and bureaucracy. Even the king milks the land for his own profit." Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come and help you spend it. So what good is wealth, except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? The rich seldom get a good night's sleep. There's another serious problem I've seen under the sun. Hoarding riches harms the hoarder. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour, and everything is lost. In the end, there's nothing to pass on to one's children. We all get to the end of our lives as naked and empty-handed as the day we were born. We can't take our riches with us. And this, too, is a very serious problem. People leave this world no better off than when they came. All their hard work is for nothing, like working for the wind. Throughout their lives, they live under a cloud, frustrated, discouraged, and angry. But that's only true if we make work and money the center of our world. An alternative view is found in the teachings of Jesus and the New Testament writers. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and thieves break in and steal," the Lord said, "but store up treasures in heaven." John adds, "Don't love this world or the things it offers you. For if you do, you don't have the love of the Father in you. For the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure and everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but from the world. And this world is fading away, along with everything people crave. But anyone who does what pleases God will live forever." And so Paul tells us we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, because everything here is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. But while we wait, we would do well to heed Solomon's advice in the last part of the chapter. I've noticed one thing that's good. It's good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during the short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. And it's a good thing to receive wealth from God and the good health to enjoy it. To enjoy your work and accept your lot in life, that is indeed a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they have no time to brood over the past. So again, if we keep the good things of life in proper perspective and don't make them the basis of our identity and security, we can relax and enjoy them. The only alternative is to get caught up in the rat race and focus on everything we don't have and what will eventually happen to what we do have. By the way, if you want to know how satisfied you are with your life, check how much time you spend looking back on what we like to think of as the good old days. The problem with that is that our memories are highly selective. We tend to think things were so much better when we were younger, stronger, and more productive. And in many ways they were. But we all had lots of problems back then too, and many of them were much more serious than anything we're dealing with now. And chances are good that if you think back to those glory days, you were thinking back then about the glory days when you were even younger. Because that's just the way we're wired. But you know what they say, nostalgia just ain't what it used to be. So don't miss out on the blessings all around you and before you because you're stuck in the past. Appreciate the things and the people in your life. Tell those people what you think about them and share everything you have and all that you are with those around you. That's how we live a meaningful and successful life, how we grow content, enjoy life, and stop brooding over a past we can't get back and wasn't as wonderful as we think. Live in the now, not the then, and not just now and then. So to sum up, evil and suffering are unavoidable, but we must do all we can to alleviate them. Number 2, envy and competition lead to emptiness and inner conflict. Learn to be content. Number 3, when it comes to all you have, you really can't take it with you. Number 4, keep money and pleasure in perspective, then you can enjoy them. Number 5, invest in the world to come and your eternal relationship with God. And number 6, don't live in the future or some imaginary glorious past. Live in the moment because your present is a present from God. So, accept your lot in life, but make sure you build on it.